Going live, magic, magic, magic. It says we're live. Okay, so first things first, are we live? Hello, everybody. Can you hear and see me?
I can hear and see you.
Yes, Mikey, you can hear and see me. Can you hear Mikey? You can't see Mikey because my computer doesn't have enough video things, but you should be able to hear Mikey. So before we get any further, can you hear me? Can you hear Mikey? Can you see me? Do you see what I see?
Do you see what I see?
I sang in Mikey's voice there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Godot Jam 2 stream. This is also our weekly live stream for Canopy Games. If you don't know us, we are Canopy Games. My name's Jan, and that's Mikey. And
Hi.
this is Tuki. And we make, along with some with some other very talented people, we make tutorials for Blender and Godot, LMMS, and Arda, and yeah, for game development. So, today we are going to do the Making 3D Pretty party for Godot. So we're going to be focusing mainly on Godot, and I don't have a specific plan, but there's a bunch of things I want to talk about, so we can spend more time or less time than anything else. But let's start with the very beginnings. How's that sound, Mikey?
I like starting at the beginning.
Okay, so
It's not something I do that often. I often start in the middle of a sentence, which keeps everybody guessing.
Now I feel like this, what do you call it? The banner might be taking up too much space here, but we'll see how we go. So here I've made a typical 3D scene in Godot. And off the bat, you're going to notice a couple of things. One, it doesn't look very good. It's very dark, it's very dingy, it looks kind of grayish. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is fix the environment. So you've made your scene in Godot, you've imported your meshes. I'm going to go over here so I can actually see what people are typing. And I'm going to go to spatial, and I'm going to add a world environment. Now, the world environment node needs an actual world environment. So I'm going to go to world environment, and I'm going to make new environment. The benefit of this is that you can save it anywhere. Now you'll notice everything's gone black because it's got rid of all the defaults. So I'm going to go to my background, and I'm going to pick a sky, and let's make a nice procedural sky. Now if I had an HDRI texture, I could put in a panorama sky, but I'm going to do that one. So we're back to where we just were. So why does this look so great? Well, the primary reason is we're using the sky to illuminate the scene, and the sky is blue. So the very first thing I'm going to do is fix that. I'm going to turn that way down and put in some ambient light. I'm going to put in a nice, just off-white like that. I've got my favorite colors set up already. That might be a bit much, but I can even turn that up. I would recommend not turning it up yet, but you can. But that should already start looking a bit more vibrant. So very first step, go to your world environment, turn down the sky contribution, and bring in some ambient light. Now this is actually...
That's quite a common question, isn't it? Why does everything look blue in
It's
Godot?
one of the things that people say when they say Godot can't do 3D is everything just looks blue. Well, that's because by default we're using the color of the sky. So if you've got blue things, change that. I'm actually not going to keep the ambient light this color, but we'll put it there for the moment, because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a directional light. Now, if you're not used to directional lights, they are a light that shines everywhere from one direction. So if I go into local mode, which is this nice little cube button here, I'm going to rotate it, it'll rotate that way. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go to shadows and switch on shadows. They're off by default because they do take up some resources, but it actually doesn't matter where I position this because the light's coming from way off scene. So I've got my shadow, I've got my light, and now some basic tips. Number one, white light doesn't exist in nature. So if you want a very stylized or plasticky looking game, use white light. I'm going to use a slightly off-white yellowy color. So let's go around here to a nice sunny color. How's that look? Looking a little bit better to me. Number two, we don't usually have only one light going on in nature. So what you could do is you get a second directional light. And all I did there was a Control D for duplicate. And I'm just going to move this one a little out the way and come from a different direction. And when we do this one is I'm going to turn shadows off and the energy to about 0.25. And let's make this a nice bluish color. Now, this is quite subtle, so only use this in like very close indoor spaces, but that's one thing you can do. The other thing you should notice is shadows aren't black. So I'm going to change my shadow on my directional light to a nice rich purple. And my ambient light is the color that it's going to look like with nothing hitting it. So let's Stay nice and bright, but go slightly bluish. Okay, so that is my first tip. Fix the world environment, fix the lighting, hallowed as. Cool, so we fix the world environment, fix the lighting. There's a few other things we could do. If we're going to light indoor scenes, I would do 3-point lighting. We could talk about that in a little bit, but I don't want to spend too much time on lighting because it gets a bit boring if you're not me. So, we're in the world environment and we've got all these other things we can do. We've got fog we can add. It's pretty self-explanatory. I usually keep the fog low-lying. This toucan's parentage might be half penguin. You are quite right, Casper. This is actually my second attempt at making a toucan. The first one was pure penguin and has just become a legit penguin. I'm going to switch on, not here, under tone map. We have a bunch of different ways of measuring the light. I'm speaking way too fast, aren't I? I've just crammed myself full of food, so I feel like I should be rushing, but I don't know why I'm rushing. Hi, Pakosh. Okay.
Did you also add coffee to the food as well? Not directly. I mean independently.
Yeah, I had coffee as well. Okay, so 2 tips. 1, filmic. This is going to make it nice and bright, and as you can see, it's really like flushing out the whites here. 2, aces fitted. This is actually brand new in Godot. In Godot 3.4. We had aces before. I tend to prefer filmic, but listen to your heart. Other thing we'll notice, look where my shadow is and look where my sun is. If you want your game to look really good in 3D, you need to match these two up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sky, my procedural sky. I'm going to go to my sun, and I'm just going to move, not the latitude, the longitude. Boop, 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 boop. The longitude, so it goes that way. Yeah, it was a good stew though. Let's just keep moving the longitude. There it is. So what I want is for the shadow to be doing roughly that. Okay, so with these 3 things, a simple 3D game is going to start looking a lot more vibrant. But there's more we can do. And I'm going to stay in world environment for now. There's auto exposure. Don't touch this. I mean, you can if you know what you're doing. I would recommend not touching it because what's going to happen is every time you look at the light, everything's going to flush out, and then you're going to come back and it's going to go dark again. Don't do that. Reflections. You can put reflections on if you want. This material is slightly shiny, so you can see a little reflection of a toucan. We've got ambient occlusion, which just adds a little bit of extra line around the walls like so. And glow, if you want a nice, bright looking thing. So, step number 1, set up your world environment, play with the settings, change the sky. Step number 2, put in your directional light. That's my first start. Hello, Gerard. Once we've done that...
Can I jump in and just add a couple of things there? So, if we go back to the tone map for the moment and have a look at the different modes that that it can be in. Now, these are all different ways of managing colours within the space you're working. Now, it'll be quite rare, I should imagine, for people to be working with 10-bit content. Most enthusiasts, as we all are, don't have 10-bit panels in front of us. A lot of TVs are now coming 10-bit, but what that basically means is that you cannot see the broad range of light to dark. It's not necessarily about colours, but being able to map these. So these themselves, all of these options here, are different ways of mapping colour, which will give you a different look depending on the screen that you're using. So it's actually quite important to, if you're going to play around with these, have a look at how it looks on different screens. If you've got a screen that's HDR capable, that is a 10-bit or greater screen. Hey, yeah, I can just see you've appeared right over the top of the thing I'm talking about. Oh, no, you're flying. Okay, I can sit a little bit behind anyway. Yes, so it's important that you know that if you change these, what you see on your screen when you're setting up your game and your colors and everything can be dramatically different from what your players might be seeing. So it's really important if you're playing with these and trying different styles and setups that you try it on different platforms as well. That is really important. Otherwise, what you think looks awesome could be completely washed out on a better monitor or completely different colors.
And I've been having a lot of trouble with this second monitor, and I finally got the settings where I want them, but get them to a friend, play test your colors, play test the way things look. Don't just playtest the game, playtest the aesthetics. And don't be afraid to change things.
So a couple of things with the SS reflections and the ambient occlusion.
Yes.
There are some things I've played around lots with this. So if you use Blender, the Eevee rendering engine uses screen-spaced ambient occlusion and screen-spaced reflections. One of the really important things to realize with these settings is the fact that they are screen-spaced. So the thing you want to be reflected is not actually on the screen. If you cannot actually see it, it will not be reflected.
Yeah.
So a great example of this is, say you've got a landing pad for your sci-fi spaceship. You're landing in, you've got nice bright lights, and you've got this wet landing pad, and it's coming down. When you're reflecting it, you won't see the underside of the ship.
Yep.
So it can lead to confusions, which is why in game engines and in fact in Eevee as well, you can usually put down what's called a reflection probe.
Mikey, I'm just going to stop you for a moment because I think your noise cancellation is doing something weird because you're very quiet and underwater to me.
Oh wow, okay.
So I don't know if there's something you can do with the mic. I don't know if everyone else hears that or if it's just my ears. If it's just my ears, then it's not a problem. But I don't want people straining.
Well, I shouldn't be underwater. I'm right up against my mic, actually.
Okay, so it's probably my connection. Can you guys hear Mikey okay? Because if it's just me, then no problem.
Yeah, I don't want to go off on my monologues and it be...
Okay. While we're doing this, I'm actually going to switch to another project. So I'm going to save this project. It's a little weird, but not unbearable. Thank you, Zach. Okay, so that just basically sounds like listening to me and Mike at the best of times. It's a little weird. It's not unbearable. I'm going to switch over to our other project, to our ARPG thing. So I'm going to go to quit to project list. Boop. And I'm going to open my RPG prototype. Because I want to talk a little bit about what you can do with plugins. So let's go to the overworld scene. Overworld. I'm trying not to sing, because we'll get copyright strikes. Okay. So playing with some basic things we've already seen already. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide some of the stuff we don't need to see. Specifically, I don't need to see particles. I don't need to see... What is that? Is that collision shapes. There we go. Okay. I don't need collision polygons. Collision... Great. That's going to make things a little bit easier. All right. We have here about 6,000 trees. And I can run this locally at 60 frames a second. Now, if I stream it, it's probably going to dip. But we can get this...
Looks pretty good to me.
Well, let's actually try running it. So I'm going to run this scene. And we've got a bunch of things happening. We've got a whole bunch of trees. We've got some voids I made. We've got... Oh, I forgot about that. Main menu. Play game. I've got the womble stuck in my head. Thanks for that, Des. Okay, so... We've got some voids flying around. It's a little bit stuttery while I stream. We've got a whole bunch of plants that are blowing in the breeze. There's a lot of stuff happening. We've got some water, we've got some rocks. And the performance is pretty solid. I wrote this in Godot 3.3. We're not using anything like Occlusion, obviously, these are outdoors. But, you know, there's a lot we can do here. There's some plugins you can do to get some really great effects. Now, all of these assets were made by Mikey. So thank you, Mikey. Except for these benches that I made, because they're not very good, but, you know, I made this picnic area. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do with some plugins. Now, we are using... Thank you. Boop. We are using a number of small plugins, and I've got a little list of them. Where's my little list? Okay. So, point the first, and this is probably my biggest one. I'm using Scatter by Hungry Proton, which is right here. Scatter is awesome, and I really recommend playing with it just because it's fun. What Scatter can do is place large amounts of multi-mesh data or static body data very easily. Am I still audible?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, great. No, I lost the window for a minute, but I'm still here.
Nice.
So what can scatter do? Well, what we've got is, for example, I've got these forests. Now when I click it, they're going to vanish because they're looking for collision, and I'm using terrain, so I'm going to go back to my terrain, regenerate the collision. It'll come back. I'm not worried about it. So let's generate my terrain. No, not generate. Let's update the collider. There we go. I'm back to my forest. Boom. Okay. So in my forest, I've got a number of things. I've got over here a little stack. I've got distribute inside path. So at the very top here, I've drawn a path. So I've just gone to my top view. In fact, I went to orthographic view and drew a very simple path. And I wanted to have a bunch of trees that were static bodies. All of these are static bodies. All the ones on the edge aren't. Because you can't get up there, it's fine. So we're just giving the illusion of a big open space, but we're actually boxing it in with terrain, and then we're filling it with a bunch of trees. Then what I've done is I've excluded long paths. I've painted these paths in, and I excluded areas for the trees to go. I did a bunch of those. And I also did exclude in the river, because I don't want trees in the river. So you can play with that. But it's not just the forest, it's also the fence. This fence here by the house is in scatter. So what I can do is I can take this point and I can move the fences around. So there's a lot of power with this thing. All of these plants are done that way. The advantage of using scatter with no collision is you can have thousands and thousands and thousands of plants or rocks or whatever it is and not take up any kind of bandwidth. So if you've got some assets and you want to lay them out either randomly or on a grid, this is a great way of doing it. So one, Scatter by Hungry Proton. I really recommend it. Another nice easy one by Hungry Proton that I'm going to recommend is... Where'd you go? Sorry, changed operating system recently and I keep forgetting how to do this bit. I would recommend Proton Trail. And what Proton Trail does is leave little 3D trails behind things. What I should do actually is, why don't I paste the links? So first, here is Scatter. And second, here is Proton Trail. And to show you what Proton Trail does, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in my game and I'm going to go into a dungeon. And I'll pick up a sword and I'm going to swing it. Because that feels like a good way of showing it off.
It's a brilliant way of showing it off.
So what it's actually doing is it's making geometry live. It's not a particle. This is a legit penguin. So let's get... So I'm running out of stamina here. Get into the dungeon. Okay, welcome to the dungeon. Yeah, it doesn't like straightness. I'm going to pick up a sword. Okay. Got my sword. And when I'm attacking, got little lights. Now, this character doesn't have the best animation, so let's get a skeleton. Maybe not one with magic, actually. So these nice active trails, just a very simple plugin. And the way it works... actually, I'm trying to do something. Dude. Thank you. The way it works is if I go to weapon template. Sorry, I forgot how I named everything. Weapon body template. Great. On my weapon bodies, I bring in the mesh here. I've just got the top and the bottom of the Proton Trail. And then on the Proton Trail itself, there's an emit, which I am switching on and off in script. So how do we install these things? It's very simple. Once you're getting off GitHub, you're just going to add an add-ons folder like this, and you're going to paste in the add-in that you've got. So very easy. It's even easier if you go to Asset Library and you search for things like terrain, and you find the height terrain map by Zillen, which I'm also using, and you put it here, and you can just go download. I've already got it downloaded, and then install, and then make sure whatever you've done, go to project settings, go to plugins, and just enable all the ones you're using. I'm using behavior tree, which isn't really relevant for today. Simple color template editor, by the way, is great. It means you can load in a bunch of colors and just save them as a favorite. So I just loaded in a template, so we have a template ready for our game. But my big ones are Scatter, Proton Trail, and the height map terrain editor, where you can actually paint your own terrain, or you can generate your own randomly. Good to go. Got collisions. Finally, I would bring in the Waterways one. So that's Here's Waterways, and you know what? I'll also link you to height map. Doopy doopy doo. Awesome. Yeah, Hungry Proton is an absolute badass. I mean, he is one of the best disobedient donkeys I've ever. That's terrible. Don't encourage that.
Have you mentioned Godways as well?
I haven't mentioned Godways. I should mention Godways, but Godways is a simple plugin that's just in the asset library. It's a little expensive, actually. If you have a lot of Godways going on at the same time, it will slow your machine down. But one or two, like at the chest at the beginning of the map, nice and easy. So what we've got here is we've got 2 waterways. And the nice thing about this waterway system is you generate your waterway and it makes a little flow map. There's instructions with the mods, which is why I'm rushing through it here. And then you can just put in like the colors and the speed and how much foam it generates. And it'll actually read the collision shapes and figure out where it should go. And if you put a buoyant node inside a rigid body, not a static body, and make it light enough, it can actually float and be pushed down water. So you want to get good water in, you want to get good terrain. We've deliberately stylized this terrain, by the way. You can bring in textures. We've chosen not to do that because this game is flat shaded. But if you wanted to have this looking very realistic and, you know, with normal maps and all the other stuff, you absolutely can. The instructions are there with the module. So those are my 4. Run with these, jump in there, see what you can do. Okay, let's jump in here once more, and we'll jump into the procedural test. There's a few things you can do here. Okay, step 1, play with particles. I don't want to spend too much time on particles, because we've got Play with Furcifer, who are wonderful with particles, who are going to be doing a particles thing later in the festival. But you can do so much cool stuff with particles. I'm only using one light color here. So I've got my light here, and I've got it on an animation with a slight flicker. All I've done is I've got the energy going from 1 to 1.1 and back again reasonably quickly. It looks fine. I've switched off torches at a distance to save speed, and I recently, as in yesterday, added Occlusion to this, so we can actually generate huge maps procedurally and not slow down. This isn't scattered, this is just me making simple props and throwing them in, but you can very quickly get some lovely little maps. And because...
Now that we've got Occlusion on, we might be able to extend the light distance.
Yes.
But we don't get that.
Well, we hadn't played with it, so...
Yeah.
There's no enemies in this dungeon at the moment, because Godot 3... Okay. If you're using procedural generation, be careful. You can't use the default navigation system with procedural generation, because in Godot 3, you can't make navigation at runtime. So just be aware of that. In Godot 4, you can, but Godot 4 is still pre-alpha and crashes a lot. These are lovely corridors. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was mentioning fog earlier. You see here, I've got this very light fog, very low down. You can barely notice it, but it gives a really nice touch. I've actually not got that many effects going on here, but I like the ones I've got. I've also got some very simple particles going on. So where should we go next? Should we go particles, or shall we go materials? What do you think, Mikey?
I think if we just approaching particles at the moment, I think we should do a little bit on particles and then move on to some material stuff afterwards.
So I'm going to come out of here. We're going to make a particle together. Right, 3D scene. I'm going to make a particle. Okay, awesome. How to make particles look awesome very quickly without stepping on anyone else's toes and repeating stuff you guys are going to hear later. First thing, I've got a bunch of particle textures. The nice thing about these particle textures is you can actually make really simple ones. So I've got a circle. I just put a brush in GIMP and made it in. Or, where's another one I made? These triangles. You can actually get really good effects with triangles. And to prove it, let's make a particle with a triangle. So first thing I need to do is I need to make a new particle material. Second thing I need to do is I need to go to process material, and I need to make a shape. Simplest thing is to use a quad. So a new quad, and I've got my process material, I've got my draw pass, and we're good to go. Now, to get this looking right, I'm going to go into the quad, and I'm going to make a new material, which is going to be a new spatial material. How did you set up flat shaded textures in the terrain plugin? That's an excellent thing. I will show you that. Actually, it's a really good point. But I'll show you this first. Okay, number one mistake when making particles, and I've done this so many times. Go to parameters, go to billboard mode. You want to enable billboard, but you have to enable particle billboard, because if you enable normal billboard, it goes weird. And why billboard barely works at all. It works here, it doesn't work in game. So particle billboard. There we go. Now it's going to face us. All right, let's give it a flag of transparent and unshaded. And let's bring in our triangles. I'm just going to bring that into the albedo. So we have some triangles. Awesome. One more trick we can do, by the way, go to parameters, under blend mode, go to add. So instead of mixing them, what's the default? Is it mix? Yeah. Instead of mixing them, if there's two on top of each other, they're going to go a little bit brighter. Final thing we need to do, go to vertex and use as albedo. That's going to allow us to change the color in the particle, not in the material. Okay, that was a lot, wasn't it? Let's go to particles. I'm going to switch off gravity. There we go. And we just have one very bright triangle. And let's start by putting a random angle in. So angle of 360. Sorry, 180. Why aren't you typing 180? There we go. And random. In fact, let's make it 360. Okay, so we now have 300. I used to teach public speaking for a living. We now have a triangle that can spawn at any angle between 0 and 360. Cool. Let's go to time and put this at 0.25, so nice and fast. And let's double the amount we have. And you know what, let's go to 64. Okay, so that's
looking awesome.
It's getting there. Nice trick, by the way, is to play with scale. So I'm going to scale, and I'm going to put in a scale curve. And I'm going to new curve texture. I'm going to click on that. Okay, I can click here to add a new, right click here to add a new point here. And I want to start around 0.5 and end at 0. And that's just going to give it a little bit of movement. We can even, because these are Bezier curves, we can just play with these a bit. We can start getting some nice things. Now, the triangle looks a bit weird like that, so maybe I'm going to give it some angular velocity. So it's going to have an angular velocity of 180, and that's going to be randomized. Maybe not. One more thing we can do, we can go into colors. Because I set the material flag to use as albedo, we can change the color here. So I could just go orange, white, blue. But what I can also do is I can put in a color ramp, a new gradient, and we're going to start orange, and we're going to end white. Yeah, let's end red. What do you think? Yeah. And we can even make that second point a little transparent.
Because they're being added together, there's a good chance if you have enough of them, they'll end up going white.
Yep. Can the Waterway add-ons do waterfalls? I've actually got a waterfall. I'll show it to you in a minute. It's slightly faked, but you can. What you want to do is increase the velocity and increase the foam. So, yes, you can. You might want to type that because poor JRW26 is just watching now. Okay, so we have here kind of a fun, sparkly one. Maybe we're not going to do completely random. Maybe we're going to turn off random, on the angle. and just have it zooming in and out like that. Where's my default angle? Let's just turn you in like that. And we can start having fun to particles that way. Let's turn you at 90. 180. I should do quite like 360. Now another good trick, put in a second particle. No, not GPU particle. Second particle. And just put another one on top of it. So this time let's make something with a circle. I'm just sticking with really basic shapes for now. So new particles and new draw paths. That's going to get you started. And I'm going to use a quad. And a set up my material. So brand new spatial material. I'm just doing this once more so we can just go through them. Transparent and unshaded. And under vertex, use albedo. And parameters, I'm going to add. And I'm going to say Y billboard. Epic time on my fast forward. Okay. So let's just play with that real quick. In fact, let's not do the circle. Let's do something a bit more interesting. Let's use the blob. Yeah. So under albedo, la 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 la. Cool. Okay. Gravity off. And on this one, I'm going to have this one moving quite slowly. So let's have a 4-second time on them. And again, I'm going to do the 360 angle with full randomness, so you can appear anywhere. Now you'll notice, because I've got 8 of them over 4 seconds, you're not actually going to see this very often. In fact, I'm not seeing it at all. Why am I not seeing it, Mikey?
I don't know.
Curious.
I don't know.
Huh.
I'm a little bit behind on the stream, of course. A few seconds.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put those back because they should be working. Do I have the wrong billboard? I bet I do. I bet I have the wrong particle on. Flags, parameters. Yep. Hey, you remember when I said don't use Y billboard? Every time. I do this for a living too. Okay. Let's set that back to 4 seconds. Great. Okay, here's the fun bit. I'm going to give this a nice deep color. And we're adding them, so it's going to appear quite white. They're going to get blown out. And I'm going to put my scale trick in. So right-click here, bip, bop. And you know what? Let's make the quad a bit bigger. This quad is actually going to be like 2 by 2. Maybe that's too big. Let's make this quad. Bloop, 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 bloop. I don't have a plan with this. I'm just playing with it. Where did quad go? Come back. There it is. 1 by 1. But maybe this isn't going to be added. Let's say this could be mixed. And we're going to mix this one as well. So basically what I'm saying is you can play with a couple of these key, what do you call them, parameters, and you'll get some really great effects. In fact, I'm just going to delete that one. And let's put you back on add. There we go. And what I might do with this one, just to finish this one off, is go to my velocities. I want angular velocity. There you go, one little pink fireball. Okay.
That is nice. Obviously, I'm a little bit behind.
So, nice. Playing with these is a great way of doing it. You mix these with Hungry Proton's trails and a couple of lighting tricks, and you get some really nice effects. So, we had some questions about terrain and waterfall. So let's take a look at terrain and waterfall. I'm going to go back to Crypto Project List. Godot RPG. I believe in miracles. Okay. To the overworld. Underhand, overground, wandering free.
I just had a bit of an old school Batman transition.
Okay, so under H terrain, we have a few different modes. Now, this is all well documented. I would absolutely recommend reading the Git. But under shader. Here we go. Shader types. We have various shaders. We are using the low poly one, but we could use a classic 4 light. Now at the moment, I don't actually have any textures in here. But what I've done is I've gone and used the paint terrain tool to color it in. Right? So I've just used this color with these, and I've gone paint, 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 paint. And because I've painted them in, when we go from low color, from low poly, we've immediately made this a lot softer, is what I'm looking for. Higher poly. It may actually look better. This is Bob, by the way. Bob's a skull. So to get that low poly effect, we just choose the low poly shader and then use the color. Is it possible to export rendered animations from Godot? Recording a particle effect animation or cutscene. Not easily. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to... Do you mean render an animation? Like you would with Blender? Because in that case I would actually use Blender for a cutscene.
I suppose fundamentally, I don't think it exists natively within Godot.
No, I mean...
You can certainly render out a scene that has an alpha transparency background, but I think you're going to be doing a lot of your own coding to get that working properly.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong. I don't know of an export video function. But again, I could be very wrong. I mean, it's an open source engine, so you can absolutely do it. Okay, we had a question about waterfalls. So here is our waterfall. All I've done is I've made a second Waterways stream. In this case, called it Waterfalls. And I've set the flow. Where's my flow? Speed 1. There we go. So it should be running nicely. And the river has a flow of 1. Oh, they both actually have the same flow. So it's just literally measuring the gravity and the fact I've put rocks in here to make it white. I've put a little bit more foam in this bit. And yeah, it's good to go. I mean, if anyone knows a way of doing that, by all means chime in. I've not seen anyone render video from Godot. I don't even know if the codecs are in there. Maybe. So yeah, one nice thing about these waterfalls is if we change the collision anywhere, we put static bodies in, the foam is just going to read automatically, and as is the flow map. Now, if you get close enough, you will actually see where these two join. But no player has found that yet. Just like no player has found the secret axe.
I found it, eventually.
I told you where it was.
Okay. So one quick one on that rendering out particles
yeah.
and capturing them. What you could do is render out those particles as you would and actually screen capture it.
Mm-hmm.
However, put the world or a plane or something else behind that you can chroma key out.
Yeah, and one of the things we do in this demo, because this is part of a Kickstarter for a series of courses we're making, which will be in Godot 4, which once it's Godot 4 here, but Godot 4 isn't out, so I'm still working on it, is we made this little particle showcase, some particles that we're using in the game. Currently I'm using 2 of these, I think, but these are all used making those same techniques. So some of these have trails, some of these have no local coordinates, some of these just spin around nicely. Currently we're using this fireball one, or is it this fireball one? I think it is fireball one. And I made the fire separately. Oh, other good trick with particles. Let me just show you this bit. By default, particles have a single point of origin. So if you go to where it originates from, I forget the actual phrase, just pick up this magic weapon. So yeah, if I just fire a normal one, you'll see it just fires from the center. But if I let my stamina charge, I can also generate particles along the box.
Nice.
So to do that, I'm just going to show you that one real quick. When you create your particle, new particles, material, new quad, great, that's fine. Go to emission shape and change it from point to box. Now right now they're generating a 1 by 1 box, but what I can do is I can change that to 0 and we have a line. So let's change that to 0 as well. Why don't you? Let's change that to 128. There we go. Here should be 0. There we go. Nice big line. So all I've done is I've made a box with a depth and a height of 0 and then a width. And now I can make firewalls, I can make rains. On our 2D game that I'm secretly working on in the background that no one's seen, I've got a little shower of stars coming down over a victory screen, and it's just the same technique. So play with these. These are great. You can also use spheres, which is awesome for like electrical effects or anything like that. Oh, some really fun ones coming in Godot 4, which isn't really relevant right now, but particle attractors and particle collision, and it's all kinds of awesome stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can set this up. So I'm going to go back to my project list because we had some questions about that plugin. Well, you can save images. Like there is an image class and then export those. I'm just wondering if it'd be worth it.
I mean, technically a video is just an image sequence.
Yeah, but to write the code to grab each frame and do it that way, like you could. I haven't played with it, but you could. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the terrain plugin. So height map terrain. Download. Will there be weather or other atmospherics? You know, we talked about that. It's out of scope, but Godot 4 can handle day-night cycles very easily, so we could easily put one of those in, at which point we could put different seasons in if we wanted to. What do I want to bring in? I want to bring in everything. Give me everything. Okay, before you can use this, you must go to Project, Project Settings, Plugins, and enable it. Otherwise, it will not work. Great. New 3D scene. So a brand new node, we should have a terrain node. H-terrain. Great. So this would give us a whole bunch of things we can do. Right now, I need to create new terrain, which I've actually forgotten how to do. How to create new terrain? Oh, I need to make a data directory. Right, I remember. Which is... where's data directory? Select the data directory property. Where's my data? Oh, there it is. Okay, I found it. To make this work, you go into your data directory, and I'm just going to call this terrain data. Blap. Great. So here is a terrain, and you'll notice it's actually bigger than my camera can see. So when I go to view, let's go to my view settings and set my FAR to 2000. Awesome. Okay. We now have a nice big terrain. Thank you. You rock, Nikoto Arts. Great. So we're going to have boop-a-doop-a-doop. Let's paint up. So nice big brush. Nice big brush. Let's make some mountains. It's a little hard to see mountains. Oh, that's smooth. What am I doing? There it is. Now, it's a little hard to see what I'm doing because I don't have any textures set in yet. But, you know, let's just make a little thing. So what I did last time is I just painted something like this. In fact, what I didn't, I raised and then leveled it. But let's level you to 64. Nice little plateau. There we go. This is just to show you how to set up the low poly thing. Get rid of that divot. I don't want that divot. Go away, divot. Okay, great. So, first things first, I want to go to shaders, and we have a whole bunch of different shaders. Low poly is not going to deal with any kind of texturing, so that's the easiest way. So I'm going to pick a nice green, and because I've got the low poly one selected, these are going to be triangles. So got that in there. If I was using Waterways, I would actually make the base height like 1 meter or 2 meters, probably 1 meter, and then dig 1 meter down using the flatten tool. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go level. I'm going to set my level height to 1 meter. I'm just going to level you to 1 meter. And then I'm going to set you to 0 and set my brush size to much smaller and just draw my little river in here. Again, a little hard to see because I don't have any lights in. So remember what I said the first thing you should do? World environment. New world environment. In fact, let's not do a new world environment. I got a much better idea. Let's save this one. Save environment. Okay, it can be a T-res, that's fine. Environment. Great. So now, ha 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 ha! Great. And we'll put in a directional light so we can have some shadow, because it's quite hard to see what we're doing with that shadow. And there we go. That should give us a little bit of depth. So when I was making this height terrain thing, I've got a flatten of 0, brush height of, brush size of, let's say 80. And that should give us this little here. So if I was bringing the Waterways plugin in, which again, I really recommend, it's a great plugin, I now have a nice place to put the path. And then with scatter, I can lay an exclusion path there so the trees don't glow on it. Nice and simple. Let's make this look a little more fun. So under H terrain, let's pick a different color. Let's just paint you. And let's turn the opacity down. These are terrible colors, but this is how you could do it, right? So there we go. You can also make your custom shaders. I'm not going to play with custom shaders. I've never played with global imaging, but you can also bring your own texture set. So if I had Classic 4 Light, I could import some textures, and I could bring an albedo, bump map, normal map, and roughness, and good to go. I don't have those made, but if you had them, just bring them in. So I got a free texture site, and they should all be good to go. This is a terrible level, but this is not actually how I'd make a level. I think I've lost Mikey. Mikey, you there?
I am here indeed. I'm watching in awe as you're creating this world.
I mean, it's a little bit, but. So one thing I like to do is I'll put the brush opacity way down. You can actually pick different brushes as well. So click here and just play with some layers. And just go full Bob Ross. Have fun with it.
Happy accidents. All that.
Say again?
Happy accidents.
Exactly. Now, these aren't colors I would actually use for terrain. These are just the colors I happen to have saved. And if I'm using low poly like this, I'm going to cover it with a lot of ground stuff, which is where scatter comes in really handy. If I'm having it big and open, I might just have it as, here's my low poly, as Classic 4. All of these are mentioned. There's also a multi-splat you can use, which is much denser and has a lot more information, but great to use. Great plugin. If you're using some 3D stuff, you want it to look good, play with this, play with scatter, play with trails, play with waterways, play with Godways. Godways is awesome. Let's look at Godways.
Oh, I love it.
So, to the asset library.
Through something like the tree.
Oh, the banner. Yes. You are right. It does. All right, I'm hiding the banner, Mikey. I'm sorry.
Bye-bye, banner.
Yep. I'll show you that one more time. I'm sorry. That was silly of me. Did I just get rid of that level? Once more with feeling. All right. Let's bring in my world environment. There's my environment. Boop. Great. Let's bring in a terrain. It's already set up with a data directory, I believe. No, there it is. Okay, good. Select current folder. Awesome. Okay. Selecting textures. So I can paint here, and down here I can change my brushes, and here I can change my colors. So bibbity bibbity bibbity. Just gonna Discord message. Oh, what's this? La 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 la. Now, normally, if I'm using one of the non-low poly ones, what I'll do is I'll actually bring in textures, because it's a lot of information to be bringing in if you're not doing that. But you could also just have this nice little oil paint effect going on just by layering different brushes. So different brush, and let's go with over here. And then I'm just going to start raising stuff. So let's flatten you to a height of 20. And because I've got the brush selected, it's not bringing it up evenly. So I can have a little bit of craggliness going on there. And let's have a bit more space. Color you in over here. Oops, way too big. Now, ordinarily what I would do if I'm painting like this is I would like get the high points here, which you can't see, so I'm going to bring in a directional light. And a shadow. Great. And let's rotate this. There we go. So I take these high points here and paint, you know, where the sun catches and all the rest of it. But it's very easy to play with. So does that answer the question? Because you're right, I did kind of run too far ahead there. I do love this plugin. I had so much fun just painting that I made. You know what? Let's go back to not collision. Oh, yeah. If you are using H-Terrain, you can generate collision for it. So update editor, right? So you make a change, you do this, this now has collision. You can set the collision layer, the collision mask, nice and easy. However, if you're using scatter, it won't read those. And every time you make a change to the scatter, the first time you load it, it won't know where the collision is. So I'll show you how to fix that. What do you think about the new LOD features coming in Godot 4? I think they're awesome. When you include LOD in the course, maybe we'll see if it's worthwhile. We might not need it in our specific case, but when we do the big course that I almost gave away the name for Godot 4 that we'll also be doing, I'll definitely cover it there because it's an awesome system. Yes. Okay, so
the thing with LOD, of course, is we are working with low poly anyway, so there's going to be very few,
right?
I mean, apart from billboarding trees, but the performance is still great with the instance we've got anyway. So it would almost be work for work's sake in our particular case with a low poly game.
Yep. All right, so the first few times you do this, it's going to feel random. So if you're using scatter and height terrain, which I do recommend, but if you're doing that, this is actually an enclosed level. It feels like a big open world level. It's not. It's, you know, artificial walls and all the rest of it. Do we plan on using particles when the character walks and falls, etc.? Maybe. It's on the list of things to look at. We're not putting the other big course on a Kickstarter. I mean, I kind of want to because I need money. But it feels weird to run a Kickstarter and then immediately run a Kickstarter before we've actually made the content for the first one. Like, that just feels very money grabby. I think we'll just release it as a standard course, unless Mikey talks me into it. All right.
So I can talk you into it.
The scatter thing the scatter plugin can read collision. So you set a height and set a ray length, and it'll cast a ray down, say, oh, there's a thing, follow the normal, place the object, right? But it doesn't know about H-terrain. So look what happens. If I select forest, bye-bye forest. And this is going to make you think you've lost all your work, but you haven't. Here's how you fix it. You go back to your terrain, click terrain, update editor collider. The information is now in the editor. Now you go back to forest, and your forest is exactly as you left it. There's a whole bunch of things you can make here that are really fun. Randomizing transforms is a good one, so I can rotate them over on the x-axis, anywhere on the x-axis, but I can also scale them between 1 and 1.5. So a lot of variety there. And here, because we've got, oh no, that's not set here, is it? It's set here, over here. Use instancing. Okay, because we've got use instancing off, it's actually going to load them in as scenes. So it's loading in lots and lots and lots of trees. But these ones in the background are not loaded as scenes. So if I get rid of forest, and let's look at rocks, for example. The rocks are all multi-mesh instances. So when we load up all rocks, I've got instancing off. I don't need any collision shapes on them. They're good to go. And they take up way less information. So yeah, if you are playing with something like H terrain and scatter, and all of your scatter vanishes, don't panic, it's coming back. You can also put shader materials on your things. So we use the shader material from Quest's wonderful shader examples. And now all of our trees blow. And then we tweaked it slightly, and now most of our leaves blow. Which I'm quite happy with. Are you using grid maps? What are the pros and cons for it? Ooh, I could talk about grid maps. Okay. I love grid maps. So if I show you our main dungeon level, one with the NPCs in it. I've done a lot of playing with grid maps. One of our previous courses, Godot Getaway, we generate a whole open world city to drive around in using grid maps, and it has a lot of advantages. Advantages for grid maps, they're very performant. You can paint them very easily once you've got them set up. Like if I want to add more stuff in here, where's my grid map? Like if I want to add more stuff in here, I could just decide that, you know, we need another room. Oops, no. That's one thing I don't like about grid maps. It rebinds my controls. Let's say we decide we want another room over here. So I'm going to go to my grid map, and it's all set up. So I just bring in a floor. Right here. And I'm going to change this corridor. And I'm going to put a doorway here. And some walls. Bibbidi. Bibbidi. Boo. And boom, we have another room. And because I've got it as a child of this navigation mesh instance, I can now rebake the navigation. And now the NPCs can get to that room. All right, it's amazing. You can do a lot with grid maps. They're a lot of fun to do with. But they have some serious disadvantages. One, if you are trying to do occlusion culling or anything like that, forget it. A grid map is a single object. So either the grid map is visible or it isn't. This room is not a separate object. I can't run any kind of distance calculation on it. I can't say if you're out of, you know, if this room is out of sight or it's out of range and don't render it or anything like that. It's a single grid map. It's one calculation. So it's an advantage and a disadvantage. In Godot 3.x, you cannot generate navigation at runtime. Oops, I deleted a wall. Come back. Which means if I want NPCs that can follow me around, then a grid map that is generated at runtime doesn't work. Now, you can generate maps using a grid map at runtime. It's very fun. But it's not going to do that in navigation. So you're going to have to create a different navigation system. If you're comfortable doing that, it's not a problem. How do you render that many grass objects without Godot dying? They are multi-mesh instances. Because I'm using scatter and I'm using multi-mesh instance, it's only really 3 or 4 geometry things being rendered, and it doesn't have to recalculate them. I also disable the shadows for them because I don't need them. Does the game and course include occlusion culling? It will do, yes. In fact, let me show you some occlusion culling. If I show you, well, here's my PCG test, right? So when we generate a room, or generate a level using the procedural generation test, this is what I actually have to start with. But if I jump in, and you know what, let's make a giant one. Let's go completely crazy. This is going to take about 30 seconds to generate. So these are 20 by 20 grid, all rooms, and lots of junctions. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. Now, because this isn't a grid map, it'd be a pain to actually place these items one by one, because each wall is going to be its own thing. In a grid map, you can just pre-render it. It's great. La 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 la. La la la. In fairness, we're doing a lot of stuff right now. Also, you wouldn't generate a dungeon this big, because a 400-room dungeon is kind of dull. Yes, this is very mysterious music, isn't it? This is not actually the stuff that Mikey wrote. This is one that I got from a pack, so this won't be part of the course. But Mikey is currently recording our LMMS course to teach us how to make music. Okay, so here is our procedural dungeon. And I'm using occlusion culling. So at each doorway there is a portal, a two-way portal. And each of these rooms is its own occlusion room. Now, I don't know how this is coming across on your end, but on my side this is 60 frames a second, which is what I capped it at. And I can just do crazy things like knock over all of the rigid bodies. Well, 2 of them, 3 of them. But yeah, it's not slowing me down.
That's the main thing, though, isn't it? It's to make sure your game's still performant.
Yeah, and we've got a whole bunch of like rigid bodies around the place, and yeah, it runs perfectly. So that's me in the course. If you're making a large game for the Jam, or just in general, occlusion culling is great. It's actually a lot simpler to set up than it looks. And just to show you what that looks like, I've got some pre-made rooms. So let's go. The way this is working is each of these is its own room with its own static body and collision shapes, and then the walls are being generated separately, right? So there's a room spawner, it's going to pick a floor and then pick some walls, some of which will be doorways, some won't, depending on the procedural generation algorithm. When I'm actually running it, they're going to be coming into this node here, tiles. And tiles is, what's right here, a room manager. And it's its own room list. So I've just set it to be itself, and then every node that's underneath counts as an occlusion thing. And then we go to the doorways. Here we go. And they've got portals just there. So anything that is visible through this portal will be rendered. Anything that isn't won't be. Done. Does occlusion culling work for exterior scenes or mainly interiors? I would suspect you really want to be using it where you've got some control over what's being used, because you're going to be rendering through a portal. But I don't know. I haven't actually played with it that much. This is the extent of my occlusion culling so far. Final thing I'd play with, light colors. Okay. Here in our level, we've got, well, we're using this. What's it called? Low Spec 500. We went to lowspec.com and we found a color palette we liked. I just copied these like so. And because I'm using this this template editor, I can paste them here, and I can go update picker. And then anything I need to color in, I could just bring in that list of colors. So we have a very, very deep purple ambient light, right? We have no skylight, no directional lights. And then these torches are only generating lights and particles when the player is in range, and they're all this nice orange color, and they're all flickering. So if we jump in this level, it feels really atmospheric. We've got a very low purple fog. It's only a meter high. And I don't even think we're using SS reflection. I think we're just using some ambient occlusion. So you can get a lot done with some very simple effects. There's plenty of other things you can play with. You can play with soft bodies. You can play with... no, that's in Godot 4. You can't play with that. Well, there's things you can play with. And all of this we're doing without texturing. This is all flat shading. We haven't UV mapped these scenery pieces and props specifically because we wanted this look. But if you wanted to spend time in Blender UV mapping, you can get some really great effects here. Purple haze, exactly. Purple haze, purple haze. I like how all the classic rock fans right now have bleeding ears from me getting that wrong. And here's a little thing for Heartbeast. Hi, Ben.
Glad you did it.
So yeah, I think that's enough of a demonstration. Should we take some questions?
Just open for questions.
Can't hear you, mate.
You can't hear me?
Now I can. Couldn't for a minute. You just wouldn't. Blub, blub, blub.
Oh dear.
So yeah, any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, jingles, interpretive dances, or pledges of allegiance to the toucan? with a slightly green screened beak. There we go. I fixed it.
No.
Can't believe I sang Purple Haze, the tune of Purple Rain.
That thing was, I was moments away from doing it. So you saved me from myself.
I can't hear you, mate. Will there be a toucan in the game? Yes, if I can make it look less like a penguin. Right now, all of our shopkeepers are penguins. Good question. If you guys are taking part in the jam, and I really hope you are, don't be afraid of 3D. There's a few more things to learn, but it's a lot of fun. Toucan Easter eggs. We've got a lot of Easter eggs in there. All of our props that you can pick up, all of our items, have tooltips, and I had way too much fun writing the book titles. I think my favorite is 50 Shapes of Graves, brackets mostly rectangular, and coming up with random book titles for Egypts. The toucan knows all. Yeah, I'm glad the toucan branding is working. Yeah, if you guys are taking part in the jam, I really recommend playing with 3D. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Last jam, I did a 1-hour game challenge where I did a little 3D box throwing game, which was very simple. And making a game in an hour is silly, which is why next time I'm trying 45 minutes. But it's great. You can do some really great stuff with it. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can just make simple little puzzles. Mikey, shall I show off the little puzzle before we go any further?
Oh, you definitely should.
Okay. Something I've been working on in secret. There's going to be a little course. I'm actually going to take this one. And I'm going to take the banner off so people can see. How do you use Linux again? Right.
I don't know, but Windows 11 has installed on my system, which doesn't
You're
seem
welcome.
Yeah.
Feels a bit loud, doesn't it? There we go. Okay, ready? Let's play.
So weird. Mr. Tap without.
So yeah, we're making a little soccer band clone because I only work in 3D, so I may as well do something in 2D. Oops, I messed it up. And these actually get quite complicated. Should we show off a complicated one?
I was actually quite surprised how complicated it got.
I actually had to add in a level in between the easy ones and this one, specifically because everyone they went from taking a minute a level to 5 minutes, or 10 in this one. How do you do this level? Right.
I don't know.
Mikey was so confident when he did this one. Then he messed it up, but... So yeah, we've got little pressure plates that can close or open specific doors. So when I move this, it's going to...
I do like the pressure plates. Kind of blew my mind when you added them.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, nice little 2D game. A couple of easy effects, some fun particles, in fact, let's... You remember what I was saying about using a box emitter? So I've got a little box emitter at the top with no height, and it's just a line of stars. I'm using random hue, and the stars are random colors, and that's it. Nice and simple. And then these nice little bubbles here is just a couple of circles that I drew. So yeah, this isn't pretty 3D, but it's still pretty. I quite like it. The pop is really satisfying. I actually just added that. I was trying to find a good movement sound, like it needed something. The other one that I'm really happy with, and this is going in the course, is this is the first time I've actually played with...
The suspense is killing me again. I can't see what's going on.
Oh yeah, that'd be very interesting. Today's games, you can not only use small tiles that are just one block, but larger ones that are an entire room. Yep. That'd be a lot of fun. Where's my configs? Here we go. CFG config stuff. It's awesome. If I go into Project data settings. So Godot has a built-in class specifically for configs, but the nice thing about it is if the information isn't there, so when I'm making a brand new config file, if there is no config file, make one, and I just make a blank config file. So just make a config file, nothing in it, just a config file, save it, great. Then load all the values, and if the value doesn't exist, use the default one, which is up here. So unlike using something like JSON where it just says, I don't know what this value is, I'm crashing, with config it says, well, what's the default? Great, I'll put that in.
Nice.
There is not a 2D line emitter. There is... There's my victory particles. Here we go. We are using a box. But it's a box with no height. So, well, it's a height of 1. Yeah, so there's a bunch of fun things that we can do. So this has been a kind of slightly rushed and jumping around and doing stuff kind of a stream, but I hope it's helpful. If anyone has any more questions, now's a good time. Yeah, I switched to Linux full-time. I've been using my laptop for a couple of years, but I switched to it full-time around the time that Windows 11 started installing because I'm just not enjoying Windows. I was like, well, let's just use this. It's done.
I haven't had any big issues with Windows.
Which is great. Like, if you're enjoying Windows, you should be using Windows. If you're enjoying Mac, you should be using Mac. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I've had a couple of bad updates with Windows. There was one 3 years back where I lost all of my data, like irrevocably lost, which was annoying.
Yeah, you were one of those poor people who actually got hit with the bug pretty hard.
Will you add a table of contents to the video? A toucan to the video? Tales of the Crypt? Which TOC do you mean? Is your 3D dungeon also getting some moving platforms? Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Explain to me the basis. Okay, easiest way to explain basis is when you look at the gizmo. Let's open a 3D scene. These arrows, think of them as the basis. That's it. So basis.z is where the Z arrow is pointing. That's all it means. So if you're rotating for basis.z, it's whichever way this basis is pointing. I don't know that our dungeon will be getting some moving platforms, although it's not impossible. But we won't be starting recording until Godot 4 is out in a stable state, and it's been out for long enough for us to transfer the code and test it. So it won't be ready in time for the jam.
The other thing, of course, is we do have a moving platform because you get to lower it.
That's true. We do have the drawbridge. But it's not specifically moving like that, because when you're dealing with rigid bodies or kinematic bodies and you've got a moving platform, you need move and snap. Move and slide with snap, I think. Yeah, move and slide with snap, so it knows to snap onto this platform. So you turn on snap to stop the character from falling off, and then turn it off so they can slide again.
The other thing, of course, is the scope of the action RPG that we're doing. It's not a 3D platformer.
Yeah,
that's not within the sort of the game design documents. So
yeah, it's
adding elements like that is going to change the game quite significantly.
It's something that I think would be possible to do. I think it's out of scope for the course. In terms of table of contents, I don't know that Teachable allows us to do that. I think students can add their own bookmarks. I don't think we can do it. What we try and do is we try and break down the videos. So the pedagogy we're using is that each lesson is one thing, right? You should be learning one thing. We might talk about things you've already covered or quickly mention things that are in the future, but every lesson is on one topic. So when you go back and you look at collision particles, there'll be a lecture about collision particles. It's there. Lots of conversations about Linux. Honestly, the thing that was slowing me down with Linux was, I mean, apart from a couple of games, but Steam has gotten very good with Proton. The thing that was slowing me down with Linux was work. We use DaVinci Resolve for video editing. We have the paid version because we're a company. And I wasn't sure if it would work on Linux. And so we did some testing and it worked great.
The rest of this is history.
Yeah, the MP4s are a problem because the audio codec isn't free, so Linux doesn't have it. But then we found a script that'll just convert the video to a different codec so we can use it. And it takes seconds. One thing, if you are switching to Linux from Windows and you decide to keep all of your stuff on a second drive, so for instance, my SSD is the operating system, my hard drives are secondary and tertiary. I decided to keep all of my documents and everything else on my hard drive, and it could just read them. What I didn't realize is an NTFS drive doesn't have the same permissioning possibilities, and Linux doesn't like that. So all of my games wouldn't run until I formatted the drive and made it Linux friendly, and now it works fine. Oh, adding TOC to the live stream videos. So what tends to happen is Mikey hands them over to our editor, who is a very nice and talented man. Who goes through these. Hi, Adam. Everyone say hi. And he gets the best clips out, and then Mikey uploads them, and I go through them, and I ignore the ones that make me look bad, and I put thumbnails on them.
Pretty much.
So yeah, I feel like this is I don't know, I'm looking like you're over in this direction. I feel like this is a good place to stop. Why am I playing with this pen? Does anyone know why I'm playing with this pen? Did you format as EX4 for cross-OS support? I did format as EX4, but not for cross-OS support, because I don't have another operating system on here.
Well, that was one of your primary issues, wasn't it? The having your stuff on an NTFS drive, because you had gigabytes and gigabytes of data.
Yep. And I didn't want to lose it. Like I need those videos for work. It's, you know. The annoying thing was I bought a second hard drive. My thought was I'll just transfer everything across. Now I found a command that will just clone the drive. It's like when you're moving vast amounts of data, you're copying a drive to another drive, just use this. It's much quicker. So I did it. It wasn't any quicker. It took 18 hours. And it cloned the drive. It repartitioned it to an NTS4, and I had to start over again.
Yes, it literally
cloned it. Nice one, Daz. So yeah, I think that's a great place to finish. Folks, don't forget to check out all the other great videos for Godot Jam 2. It's a lot of fun to say. Join the Discord for Godot Jam, which is, I should get that for you. Let me get that for you, if you don't know it already. Invite people. No limits.
No. Sorry.
There's no lyrics. There we go. Join that. Watch the other videos. Take part in the jam. Be awesome. Go forth and multiply. Yes, we have no bananas. Bye.
See you guys later. Bye.